Greetings, Guzzlers. I'm going to make some sausages. It's been a long time since I made sausages. I've got my sausage grinder and filler, or whatever you want to call it, out again. There's probably at least a year since I made sausages. But I need some specific type of sausages. I want some Irish or Irish style bangers. Now, you may have heard of bangers and mash, particularly in England. Bangers are a word for sausages that's used in the UK and in Ireland. Okay, and there's a reason why they're called bangers, and yes, it is because they can go off bang as such. So it takes quite a lot of effort to make sausages, and it takes a bit of prep, a bit of chilling, a bit more prep, a bit of chilling. But anyway, we're going to get started. So we're making some homemade Irish style bangers. Now, what I've got here is some pork belly. Now, I could only buy this in strips. We don't really have butchers around here anymore. Most of the butchers have gone. Never said that. There's a local one. Never used it. Perhaps I should have gone there. Anyway, and what we want to do, we want to start by cutting it into about 1 inch cubes. This is just simply so that we don't overface the grinder. Now, these have got fat on them, they've got a bit of skin on, although I think the skin's actually been removed of these belly ones. But you need fat in your bangers. You need something else to make them bang, but the fat will contribute, but also, of course, the fat contributes flavour. So what I'm doing here is I'm just slicing up this pork belly. I've got about 230 grams of that. In fact, I've got a little bit more because I've got some pork shoulder there. You can have different cuts of meat, but pork shoulder is possibly the preferred one. And I haven't quite got enough. You want about don't want that on the floor. You want about 910 grams, and I've got just under 900. So just like the pork shoulder, pork belly, sorry. This is the pork shoulder. I'm just going to cut this up into cubes. And once I've done that, I'm just going to chill that in my freezer for about 15-20 minutes. And while we're doing that, we'll move on to the flavourings. We've got our lean and our fat pork in the freezer, chilling down for about 15-20 minutes. It doesn't matter. Well, you perhaps don't want it frozen solid because your grinder might not be up to the job, but the colder you can get it, the better. And actually, the other thing you need to do is take your grinding equipment and shove that in the fridge or freezer, chill this down as well. Carton. So while that's doing that, we're just going to get on with the spice blend because it's flavoured with various spices and herbs. Now, traditionally you would put this in hog casings, so basically pig's intestine. We're not. We're using these collagen ones. They do say, oh, you don't need to soak these, but previously when we made sausages, we found that when we tried to use them without soaking them, it didn't work. So we will be soaking them, but not just yet, because we've still got another chill phase for the meat. Anyway, I've got about half a cup here of dried breadcrumbs. Okay, don't have to be dried, just all I've got. And then into my spice blender, I'm going to put, a teaspoon of garlic granules as such. I've got garlic powder. Okay, so technically speaking, I don't really need to put that one in there, but there you go. Half a teaspoon of onion granules and 1.5 teaspoons of salt. So what I've got instead is I've got 2 teaspoons of onion salt. Then you want some ground nutmeg. If you've got some mace, which I can't find, mine's buried, you can put half a teaspoon of mace. I've got a teaspoon of ground nutmeg, Again, most of these probably don't actually need to go in my blender, but the next lot do. So I've got some dried rosemary. I've got half a teaspoon of that. If you weren't using onion salt, like I say, you'd use 1.5 teaspoons of salt. And then I've got some half a teaspoon of dried sage. And then I've got half a teaspoon of dried thyme. So they're all going to go in there. Get rid of them. And then I'm just going to grind this into a powder. And then that will be our spice mix. Turn the power on. So, get that tipped out, and then the next thing is just to wait for that meat to be chilled. I can't find my plunger, so the rolling pin fits all right. I've got the medium grind. You've got medium and small with this one, and this is going to go back into the freezer after we've ground it. It's starting to stick into the side there. So it's going to be ground, and it doesn't matter too much about making sure this is mixed yet, okay, because it's going to go through the grinder again, like I say, this time on a small one, but also we're going to then mix in them spices, so it'll all get mixed up then. If you remember, this is noisy, so it's simply a matter of what I'm doing this. Right, so that's ground. And now that's going to go back in to the freezer for about another 15 to 20 minutes. So if you haven't done your spice blend by then, now it's time to do it. But equally, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start soaking my casings. Now I'm going to need about 5 foot of casings, probably not quite that much. This is going to make about 10 sausages. Now, if you're doing hog casings, they're very salty, because of how they're sort of stored. Yeah, that'll do. And so you would need an additional step, which is a rinsing one. And you'd need to rinse the inside, just hold it out under the tap and rinse it through. But in the meantime, well, actually before I do that on that, I'm going to get that in the freezer, because we want to keep that nice and chilled, remember. And I'm also going to remove that plate and replace that with the small grinder. Here's our chilled again meat, and that's going to go back through that grinder, and like I say, this time we've got the small grinding disc on it. Now, sausages have been around a long time. The Romans made them as such. And they would have done what we traditionally do still today, which is put them in hog casings. But like I said, I think I said these are collagen. These are not actual hog casings, as it were, or intestines, or whatever you want to call them. I'm just trying to make a bit of room there. And so, you know, they brought sausages to Britain and Ireland, but these are what we call bangers, but I might have to tell you that once we're finished grinding. So I'm just running this through, like I say. Don't put it in reverse, you twat. That's all that meat through, and what we're going to do now is just going to put this to one side. Okay, well, I'm going to put this to one side, because we now want to mix up our meat with our spices. Now, get me long gloves, better get some more. So we're going to sprinkle in that spice mix, whether it wants to go in there or not, and the breadcrumbs. Now, there is one other thing we're going to put in there. These are bangers. They're called bangers because traditionally when you cook them in the pan, they would explode, and they did that because during World War One, when things got a bit, actually, let me get, while I'm talking to you, what did I do with that bag? There we go. We need some shaved or broken up ice. Now you're going to want, you're going to want about a cupful. Okay, because we're going to add this ice to the meat. See? Now, during World War One, as I was saying, obviously there became a shortage of things like meat and that. So what happened as a result was cheaper fillers would be put in, so like bread and stuff like that. And do you think we use that one? And also, as it happened, there would be more water in it. Now the problem with the water was that when you then put them in the, the pan to fry them, a bit more than that. When you put them in the pan to fry them, obviously the moisture inside, a couple more bits I think, would result in steam being generated, and they would literally burst through the casings, causing a bang. Hence the term, they got the name bangers. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get my other rolling pin, and we're now just going to bash that. Finding that oven. It's weird, that oven. This is my new oven. It's weird in that it seems to carry on running the fan to cook like till it's cooled down below a certain temperature. So just bashing this up. And then we're going to mix that in there, and we're also then going to put our casings onto there. Probably even better if I would transfer this to a bowl. We want to thoroughly mix together the meat and the spices and the ice. I did have a few big lumps of ice in there, so I've removed them. And then we'll be ready to fill our sausages. I think some of this ice might be getting a bit tiny. So just gently, we're trying obviously not to melt the ice too quickly, so we've got to be working fairly quickly here. But we want to make sure we've evenly distributed the spices and the breadcrumbs throughout the sausage meat, despite the fact that it's trying to distribute itself just about everywhere else. I think another big lump come out. Never mind, it's a big lump, don't want that. So when I feed this in, I think we'll also make sure we don't put any big lumps in there. Right, so all I need now is to get some form of plate, or I might use a baking tray, to which we can then feed our sausages out. Now it's a little bit of a tricky operation because you're feeding in the meat and at the same time creating your sausages. But let's get this ready to fill. Tie a knot into the end of our sausage casing, and now this is where it gets quite tricky because we've got to try and feed. Now what I might have done is created an airlock in there, so we'll have to see how we get on, but let's give it a go. And as I feared, it's too much of an airlock, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to snip off that casing, and now that I've got the air out, I'm going to tie it off now. And this is where, oh, I'm going to have to forget about my glove, I think. I've now got to try and bend it. So it's just a matter of controlling how quickly that comes off of there to ensure that you're filling your casing. So I'm just going to run all this meat through and then we'll do our link. And there you have your sausage. What did I do with my scissors? So I'm just going to cut that bit right there. And we're now just going to tie that end off. Now I'm just going to create a bit more space and then we're going to divide these up into individual bangers. There's a selection of sausages, need a little bit of tidying up. Now really they want to chill for at least 12 hours. Now I'm going to be needing to use some of these later, and I might just fry one up anyway just to see what it tastes. Some good old spits just now as moisture was coming out the ends, and just now as I turned it, you can see obviously there's a lot of moisture in there because of the spitting and everything that's going on. Going in the eye. I think our little pate is done. You might have noticed one's missing. Because I wanted to break it out and see if it was cooked. So, obviously this is hot. So we've got the herbs, we've got the spices in here. Also, the garlic comes through particularly strongly. Nor does the onion. I think you're getting the rosemary. Nice texture. When we get to eat our sausage, you see it's like when you eat the sausage. Right, let's fry our banger. So, going to be hot. Obviously, that end was the one where the ends all come undone and it was all coming out. You see, this casing has split. That might have been when I was turning it and I used a fork to outdo it and it might split. But anyway, let's try our banger. Pork sausage. What's not to like? There you go. Our traditional Irish style banger.